Hello there my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns and today I'm going to show you how to make these Starry Kumihimo earrings. Now these are based off a bracelet design that I did previously, so of course you can make them to match and you have a cute set. And I'll make sure to leave a link for the tutorial for that bracelet in the description box down below. Otherwise, if you want to learn how to make these earrings, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. First of all, I have my Kumihimo disc of course, so we need a round one here and I'm just using the mini disc. And then to make the braid with, we need two different cords. So first of all, I have a satin cord here. It's a 1mm one and I'm just using this lovely burgundy colour. And next I've got this S-Lon cord in a matching colour. Now this cord here is going to be used to basically carry the beads. And as for the beads, I first of all have these GemDuos here. This is what's going to create the star. And you can use either GemDuos or DiamonDuos, it won't matter, it will have the same effect. And then I'm also using these 11 Miyuki seed beads. Now this colour here is this galvanized blush. I thought they would go nicely with the colour of the GemDuos and the cord. But of course you can choose all your colours how you want to. You can also choose to leave these beads out if you want a clean edge rather than beads along the edge. Now I then also have my thread here, and again I'm using a matching colour to the rest of the cords so it blends in nicely. I'm going to use this thread along my beading needle to basically be able to create the stars with once we've made the braid. And then of course we need our findings as well to be able to finish it all off with. So I'm using these Kumihimo ends here to finish the ends of the braid, and they have these loops in them we can attach our findings. So I'm just going to be using jump rings to attach to my earring posts and butterfly backs. So alongside the Kumihimo ends there, I will also be using my E6000 glue. So it's nice and strong and this glue works well with the materials that we're using. So the full material list here and links that might be useful will be in the description box down below the video. You can check that out. Otherwise, let's get all the materials ready and let's get started. So then the lengths of cords we'll need to cut are first of all 4 lengths of our satin cord and then 4 lengths of our S-Lon cord, and they were all about 40 centimeters long. And then I put all the ends together here and tied a regular overhand knot just to hold them together in place when we get started. So these cords here are going to create a braid, and this is for one earring. So of course we need to repeat this to make the second earring. So then we need to take our cords here and of course attach them to our Kumihimo disc so we can actually get started making the braid. So I'm going to take the knot there and put it down through the hole in the center, and then I just grab onto it with my fingers on the back of the disc, hold it in place. We then need to distribute the cords here on the disc. So I'm just going to start with my satin cords. So I'm going to put one straight up top there in the slot number 1. Then I'm going to put one directly opposite that, so straight on the bottom there. And then I have 2 left, and these are going to go right out on the sides, again directly opposite each other. So basically in quarters all the way around the disc. Now I'm just using the numbers here on the disc to kind of reference my starting point. And we then have the S-Lon cord. That's going to be the same thing but just slightly off, so basically in between the satin cords. So the first one here I'm going to place right in between these 2 satin cords, and the next one in between the next 2, and then just the same with the remaining 2 cords. So they are also basically quartered on the disc, and this is then our setup. Then to get started making the braid here, what I'm going to be doing is first a section of braid with no beads or anything. So I'm just going to show you the actual structure of making the braid. What I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm just using the numbers to kind of reference my starting point. So I'm going to take this cord from slot number 1. So that's always going to be my starting point for a new round. I'm releasing that, bringing it over the middle, down towards the bottom cord that's directly opposite it. And then before I do anything with this cord here that I brought down, I'm going to release that bottom cord and then place that top one we brought down into the exact slot that we released this bottom one from. So I'm basically replacing it, and then the bottom cord here we just released, I'm bringing it up and placing it into the top slot where the other cord originally came from. So they've literally swapped places. Then I'm going to turn my disc a quarter in clockwise direction. And then I'm going to do the same with the other two satin cords. So I'm starting out moving all the satin cords first. Again, I'm taking the top one here, bringing that down, release the bottom one, replace the top one into that bottom one, and then bring the bottom one up into the top one. And again, they've now just swapped places as well. So now I've moved all the satin cords. I'm then going to move over to the S-Lon cord. So I'm just rotating my disc in the same direction, but to the very next cord that we run into, which is obviously the S-Lon cord. So the very first ones is just a slight turn we need to do, but otherwise the movements are the same. So I'm releasing the top S-Lon cord, bringing that down to replace it into the bottom one, and then the bottom one goes up. And then turn the disc another quarter to then repeat with the remaining S-Lon cords. So like that, and that is basically now one full round. So I'm just going to turn my disc continuously in the same direction until we get back to where we have that number one, where we started at the top, because that's now going to be my starting point for the next round again. So what I'm going to do is literally just this for a little bit until we then have the braid that start to grow on the back of the disc. And I'm just going to continue to hold my fingers there onto the braid. In this case, obviously it's kind of on the knot, but as the braid grows, it will be on the braid, because I'm going to continue to do it right underneath the hole on the disc, and then just start the next round in the same way. We do the satin cords first. The top one comes down, replaces into the bottom slot, and the bottom one goes up into the top slot. So the swap places. The same thing with the next pair of satin cords. I always then keep that top one kind of towards the right as I release the bottom cord and replace that top one into it, and then turn to do the S-Lon cords, starting with the first pair here. Replace them with each other. Turn for the next pair of S-Lon cords, which are the last remaining ones to do move in this round. And again, that's now moved all the cords in this round, so I've completed the second round here. Turn the disc continuously till we start back on that number one. So just keep doing this until we have, like I said, a short length of braid. So now I have a short little length here. You can see it coming out on the back, and there's no beads so far. So I have that ready, and now what I want to do is start adding in beads, because it's going to obviously be the main part. So this end is really just to be able to finish off the ends of the braid with. So I'm going to start the next round in the same way. Start with the satin cords. So we're not going to add beads to the satin cords here, so I'm just going to move them in the same way that I showed you before. Then straight on to the next pair, moving the cords, and then now reached the first pair of S-Lon cords, and here I want to start adding in my beads. So I'm going to start just adding in my seed beads. So the top cord here that I'm going to bring down, before I do that, I'm just going to add, I have my beads ready here, laying in front of me. So I'm just going to add one seed bead onto that length of cord. So the S-Lon here, now that's the top one. And as I'm then releasing the cord, I'm just letting that seed bead drop down into the center of the disc. And I'm going to make sure it drops all the way down till it can't go any further. And as I'm bringing the cord down, that seed bead needs to stay on that side of the braid. And then place it into the bottom slot there, and then just bring the bottom one up. So right now I'm just adding in one seed bead here, move to the next pair of S-Lon cords, and I'm not adding a bead into those. So that was just adding one seed bead during this round of movements. Now start the next round, and I'm going to do the same thing. So move the satin cords first, the other ones here, and then rotate the disc till you reach the first pair of S-Lon cords, and this is the one you can kind of see down there where I added the bead last time. I'm going to add another seed bead now, so just one. Try and get that on properly, and then again let it drop all the way down, and as I'm releasing the cord, it goes into the middle of the disc there. I'm bringing it down, making sure the bead stays on that top side of the braid, and then move the cords again, so like this, and then move the remaining S-Lon cords, and they kind of then hold that bead more in place now, and then rotate, be ready to start the next round. So if we can see here, I have added 2 seed beads now. So the previous 2 rounds that I did, I added 1 seed bead to each. Now that is kind of just the beginning of the bead section here. Get to that first cord, start the next round, because now I want to also start incorporating in my GemDuos. Again, moving the satin cords first without any beads adding, and then reaching that first pair of S-Lon cords, and on this top side again is where we have the seed beads. I want to continue doing that throughout, so I'm always going to be adding a seed bead to the top one before I then release it, and as I'm bringing it down, make sure that seed bead goes right down into the hole in the center of the disc and stays on that side. Now this bottom cord here I've released, and now instead of just bringing it up, I actually want to add my GemDuo to this cord here. So I also want to make sure I add my GemDuos in the correct way, because they kind of have a front and a back to them. The back is more flat, and then the front is a little bit more shaped, almost faceted you could say. So I'm going to lay it flat on its back, and then put my cord through the left side of it. And that is just how I'm going to continue to do it, to make sure I have a routine of how I'm adding these beads, so they're all going to end up facing the same way when they sit within the braid itself. So again, in this case here, just let this drop all the way down. So obviously we just have the cord here going through one hole in the bead. Let it drop into the middle there, so that sits on the bottom side of the disc. And then as you're bringing up the cord to the top, it's going to stay on this side. And if it doesn't, if it kind of pops up, just push it back down, and you can see it's kind of sticking out towards the side and away from the braid. And again, turn your disc for the next pair of S-Lon cords, and these are just going to be moved basically to trap those beads more in place. Like that. That's this round. So moving on to the next round. Now what we're going to need to do, because now I added in my first GemDuo on this previous round, we're going to add in all our GemDuos in a pattern here. So we do also though need to create some space in between the GemDuos to be able to then bring them together once we've made the braid and create that star. So that means I'm not going to add the GemDuos in the rounds right after each other. So I'm starting my next round here, the first round after I added the GemDuo. Moving the satin cords and getting to the first S-Lon cords, and like I said, I am going to be adding a seed bead in every round though. So just kind of make sure that comes all the way down. Again, that sits literally above the previous seed beads that I added in. They're going to all be sitting on the same side. Bring that down. And now again, the bottom one here, I'm not going to add a bead. So this is one round, the first round after I added my GemDuo, where I then only add a seed bead. Start the next round like this, moving the satin cords first. And then again, when I get to my first S-Lon there, I just want to add, whoops, that kind of flew away. Let's grab another one then. I want to add a seed bead to it. Let it drop down, bring the cord down, make sure that seed bead stays in place. And this one also I'm not adding a GemDuo to. So this is now my second round after I added a GemDuo, where I'm only adding seed beads. The last pair of satin, or S-Lon cords, sorry. Continue and start the next round. So move the satin cords like all the other times. The other pair. And then again I've reached my first pair of S-Lon cords. The top one, like all the other times, gets a seed bead. To basically sit on top of the other ones. Bring that to the bottom, and then the bottom cord here is loose, and now I want to add in another GemDuo. So basically that means we added one GemDuo in a round, then I did 2 rounds without adding a GemDuo, only the seed beads, and then this round here, which is the third round you could say after adding a GemDuo, I now want to add a GemDuo again. So making sure I'm adding it in the same direction so they end up sitting the same on the braid. Let it drop down. Make sure it stays on this side here. And then you kind of just trap them more in place by moving the last pair of S-Lon cords. Move, turn your disc here to start the next round, and let's just have a look. You can then see the 2 GemDuos are kind of sticking out from the braid there with some spacing between them, so there's basically 2 rounds between the GemDuos, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. So basically now I'm going to start the next round here, and I'm going to do 2 rounds now without adding GemDuos in, only the seed beads, where the third round after this I'm then going to add another GemDuo. So that's going to be the pattern. So we need to end up adding 6 GemDuos to the braid, and there's going to be 2 rounds in between each of the GemDuos. So just continue until you've done that, of course adding the seed beads in on every round though. So I now continued braiding, and I've ended up with my 6 GemDuos in the braid with that even spacing between them of the 2 rounds, and also got my seed beads all the way along. And after that last GemDuo I also did 2 rounds with the seed beads, just like we did in the beginning there. So this is basically the beaded part of the braid. Now I'm going to continue braiding but without any beads, because we just want to make another short end of the braid there without beads, just like we did in the beginning. So just continue doing that. So now I'm done with my braid here. Can take it off the disc. Now of course, if we just remove the cords, it's going to unravel. So I just want to secure the end in place. So I'm just going to take the 2 satin cords that I was going to move next, starting that next round. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to release them from the slots, bring them across the middle and tie a regular knot. Tighten that all the way down so this knot sits right at the end of the braid. And tighten that nicely. Then I'm gonna release the other 2 satin cords and then do the same thing, bring them over the middle, tie a knot, and then tighten this, and this knot is going to sit right on top of the other one. Now we have the satin cords left. So release 2 opposite each other. Tie a knot across the middle there, again to sit on top of the others. And with the S-Lon cords here, I always like to tie 2 knots because just doing one, it's gonna come undone easily. So I'm just gonna tighten that first one and then do another one right on top of it. Make sure I pull that nice and tight. And the final 2, release them from the slots. And then bring them across the middle to create the knots right on top of the other ones. And again, make sure to do a double one. And just like that, and pull that nice and tight. You can remove the disc, and then here we have our braid. Now of course we need to make another one like this for the full pair of earrings. So make the other braid as well, and then once we have that, then obviously we need to start bringing this in place so we can actually achieve that star with the GemDuos. So then I'm going to grab one of my braids here, and then also we need to cut a length of our thread ready. So I have that here, and it's really up to you how much you're comfortable working with. It doesn't need to be too much because obviously it's just a pretty small braid that we're working with. It's just earrings, but about an arm span or wingspan or so. And on one end I've just tied a knot to be a stopper, and I've also put a needle then on the other end. Of course I've then pulled some other thread through so it's doubled over, and it's going to make it a little bit shorter to work with. So I have my needle and thread ready. So first of all, I want to attach the thread here. So I'm going to start on one end, so this section here where there's no beads. And to attach the thread, we just want to start going through the braid from one side to the next. And then that knot that we did is going to act as a stopper for now. And then I'm literally going back through the other way. So first of all, like I said, we're just attaching it here before we then get to working with the beads. Pull it all the way through. And I'm just gonna go back and forth like this just a couple of times, because I want to make sure that it's nice and secure here before we actually move on to the beads. Avoid getting any knots and tangles. So just undo them here. And then I'm just going to go back through and get close to that little tail sticking out. There's something a bit like that. And again, just pull this all the way through, because what I then personally just like to do is take the little tail here and just tie a knot with the thread. So I'm literally just tying a regular knot and tightening that, and then I tighten, make one more knot here. So basically I'm making one knot on top of the other. Just for a bit extra security, and then pull that nice and tight. So that is pretty secure now. So what I'm going to do is take my needle again, and I'm going to start working my way down towards the beads. So again, you just want to go back and forth through the braid from side to side, and obviously because I'm using a similar colored thread to the cords, it's going to blend in nicely. So before I go too much further here, what I just want to do is cut off the excess of this thread, just because I want to avoid it getting in the way and tangled up, just so that's out of the way. Just do that little end there if I can, but it's not too big of a deal. So just something like that, and then again I'm grabbing my needle here, because I'm getting to the point where I'm reaching my first GemDuo, and we need to get the needle and the thread in the right position. So I'm going to go back through again, and I'm going to then make sure that the needle is coming out right next to the base there of the GemDuo, or the point, and it's going to be on, in this case here, the way I'm holding it, the left side. So the left side of that very first one, in other words, basically in between the two GemDuos, because we then, and to pull this all the way through, will be in position to take our needle again and then actually start going through the GemDuo. So I'm going to go through the hole that already has the cord going through, so it's connected to in the braid, and this is then coming away from all the rest of the beads, and then back through the other hole in the opposite direction, which means then the thread is going to end up laying along the side of the bead, like that. So now that we're in this position, we're basically in the inner hole now, because when we bring all these GemDuos together, all these kind of, the holes that are away from the braid are going to be the inner holes once the star shape is created. And basically from this first GemDuo in that inner hole, I want to go straight through the next one and through the next one, and do that with all of them. So go through the holes in the GemDuos that haven't been used. So like that. Pull the thread all the way through, and then you can see if I pull this tight, it's going to bring them all nice and close together, and that's kind of the effect we're going to get. Now I'm going to take my needle again, and basically this path that we just created, pulling the GemDuos tight, I want to go through that again. So go back through the first one and the next one after that. Just do 1 or 2 beads at a time. So basically just do another round. Until we get back. And we've basically then gone through all the beads twice in these inner holes, and then I'm just going to go through the next one again as well. So that's the very first bead again, because then we want to make sure we start to pull this tight now. So make sure to pull this tight so we can get all the thread nice and tight as well, and the beads properly into position. So something like that. And now I'm just going to take my needle again, and I'm going to continue to go through the beads here, but making sure that it stays tight in the middle there, because we don't want any loose thread either sticking out anywhere. And basically I just want to do a few rounds in this same path here in the middle, just to kind of reinforce the thread, because you don't want to just have one or two threads going through. There's plenty of space to do a few rounds to make it stronger, and keep making sure that it's pulled nice and tight as well. So just go around a few times until you feel it's secure enough. So now going around this several times there, I've ended up back through the very first bead that we went through. You can see there, I've gone through that one as well. So to get back to the braid, what I'm going to do is from this hole where my thread is coming out, the inner hole there, on the same bead, I'm going to then go to the outer hole again, the one where the cord is going through and it's attached to the braid, in the opposite direction, just like when we first made our way to the inner hole. Pull that through. And then from there, I can then put my needle through the braid, making sure it's right next to the bead. Through to the other side. And then we've made it back to the braid, and we've also now created our star shape that's pretty much caged in there by the braid itself. Now what I then personally like to do is make my way all the way around the outer edge here, just to kind of help reinforce the shape a bit, but basically going back and forth through the braid like that. Back to the outside. So nothing major, just back and forth here, making my way all the way around to the other side. It's just going to kind of help it hold its shape even more. So now I made it all the way to the end here of the braid. Then what I want to do is, again, using my needle, I want to basically connect the two ends together with the thread. So instead of just going from one side to the other of the braid like that, I actually want to go all the way through the other braid as well, or the other end. So basically we're going to be creating a bit of a connection point here. And it's just to help hold the whole shape together, but also basically to make it a bit easier to finish off the ends. So just untangle that little knot there and then pull it tight. And now of course here, to get this to stay in place, because right now this can easily pull open, I want to go back and forth through this little area a few times. And then same way, it's through both braids. Just grabbing that with my pliers, get a bit of a better grip. But otherwise, go back and forth until you feel this is nice and secure, and basically the shape is exactly how we want it. So then finally what I'm going to do is use this thread just to bring these two cords and hold them together, or braids rather, even more. So I'm going to take the thread that's coming through the braids, and I'm literally going to start wrapping it around both braids there, pretty tight, and just kind of creating a little bit of an end to this with something a bit like that is fine. And then I take my needle again that's still attached and go back through the braids. Now I can obviously be tighter now because we have much more thread in this area. So using your pliers to help grip the needle can be very helpful. But then otherwise, pull the thread all the way through and keep pulling it while still holding on to that thread that we wrapped around. And then pull it nice and tight, so now I can let go, and obviously it's not going to unravel. Now, what I then literally just want to do, and all there is left to do really with this, is to finish off the thread. So it's a matter of, I like going through this still a couple of times. That will help secure it more. But then I'm also just going to start tying a couple of knots. So for instance, where my thread is now coming out, I can just then, staying in this area, kind of just mainly going through the thread there itself. As you can see, I'm literally in the area where the thread is already coming out. Pull the thread through. Now I'm not going to pull it all the way. I'm going to make sure to leave just a little loop like that, and then grab the needle again, and I go through that loop once and twice, and then just pull all the thread through the loop, and then I can just carefully there go in and pull on the thread, and as it's then pulling the loop down, it's going to create a little knot. Now I like to then, once you've made a knot or two, obviously this is just one, but I'll make another couple of knots. Once you've made your last knot, make sure to always go through to somewhere else before you then cut off the rest of the thread. So just do that until you feel it's secure, and then you can cut off the excess. So now we got both of the braids to this point here. Then all that's left to do is finish off the very ends of the braid and attach our Kumihimo ends. So obviously I'm just going to do one at a time here. So because we've collected these ends of the braids nice and securely together, what I can do is go in and take my scissors and literally cut off the rest of the braids. So I'm just leaving a little bit of space from where I did all the wraps with the thread until the point where I'm cutting. Cut straight across both braids, and if you have any little stray cord you can always cut that down. So there we go. And then what I like to do, because I'm using a synthetic cord here, it's the satin cord and the S-Lon, I like to kind of just melt down the ends here. So we're singeing them, and obviously this is a naked flame because I'm working with a lighter and it does get hot, so do be careful. But I'm basically going to take those ends that are left and just kind of melt them down a bit. It's just to collect them together a bit more, so they're not kind of going out in all directions. Now if you're using a natural cord, or if you don't want to work with the flame, you can always just add a bit of glue and then cut off the braids. But this is just really to collect all the ends together, like I said, so they'll more easily be able to fit inside the Kumihimo end like that and sit just perfectly. So of course do the same with the other one, and then we just got to attach these using glue. So I have my E6000 here, and I'm just going to be applying it using a toothpick. I've got my Kumihimo end ready. Add a bit of glue onto the toothpick there. Doesn't have to be too much, obviously, enough to kind of then put the glue into the Kumihimo end and cover all the inside walls, you could say. But we don't need to completely fill it up because obviously the ends of the braid are going to go inside, so whatever is too much glue is just going to come spilling out. So add some glue in there, but don't fill it up completely. If you have any left, you can always just add it to the end of the braid here. And then you literally just want to put the Kumihimo end on top over the ends of the braid. And I'm just going to make sure that obviously that loop on the Kumihimo end sits in the correct direction. And then do the same with the other one, of course, but then you literally just have to leave these to dry, and then you just use those loops there to attach your earring findings. So that's how you make these Starry Kumihimo earrings, and of course they make a cute set alongside the matching bracelet. So I'm going to make sure to leave a link for that in the description box down below. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.